Okay, next question from, okay, this actually fits in. Next question is from a lady named Sandra. She says, what has been your biggest spiritual pivotal moment yet to date? We'll go with Dana first.
Mine was, this is just the biggest one. I took the opportunity to go to Sri Lanka a year ago last May, April, May. Yes. And before I went, I didn't know how the heck I was going to get there. I didn't know how I was going to pay for it. Just knew that I had to go because it was jumping out of my chest that I had to go on this healing retreat. And it was 2 weeks in Sri Lanka with a woman that I did aromatherapy acupressure with. I'm a massage therapist, healer, 13 years. And this work that I take courses with her changed my entire practice. And so I just knew that I had to be in the room with her. And I knew that I just had to go. And so I purchased the course, and then I was like, where the hell is Sri Lanka? And so then I had to look on the map and figure out that it was exactly halfway around the world. So then I got my first passport. I went outside the country for the first time. I was 42 years old. And the moment that I stepped on the plane in my hometown in Helena, Montana, before the next 4 flights to Sri Lanka, I said, I release all control. I'm just going to go, and I'm going to have no expectation. I'd never done anything like that in my life because I am a complete control freak with like all these little pieces of parts of puzzles of everything. Yet I don't like to think that I am, but I totally am. And so I got on the plane, and I didn't know about the connections. I didn't know how long the flights were. I was on the airplane between Seattle and Japan, and I was like, are we there yet? And then I looked at the flight path, and I was like, sweet baby Jesus, it's only halfway. What? And I was like, my legs hurt. I mean, I had no idea. And so when I got there, I got off the plane, and I walked through this small airport, and I walked out to where I was going to be picked up, and the heat and the condensation and the humidity, and then the smell of Nag Champa, and I was like, I am in heaven. I think I died and I'm in heaven. It was just like this whole aromatic, spiritual, yummy Buddha hug. It was so fantastic. And the entire time I was there, I literally sat back and watched a room full of healers and doing all this fabulous stuff and hearing the monks, talk on the microphone at 5 o'clock in the morning while we meditated. And it was just this experience of letting go. And it was the first time I didn't have to worry about anything. And I didn't have to worry about anyone and my children. I didn't have to worry about my dog. I didn't even worry about who I was with because I knew that I was held in sacred space and high regard while I was there. And I was able just to be and be present. And that whole experience and everything that we did was of its purest, rawest form because I had no control. And I'd sit back and giggle at like all of these really strong healers, like thinking, 5 minutes late. This didn't happen. I'm really hungry. We're supposed to be, I mean, not that angry, but I mean, it was just like this. And I just let it all be. And for the first time in my life, I was able to just be completely present with myself, with the energy of source, with a beautiful island that I had no idea, of ever before. And it really struck a light bulb in me to make me realize, there's so much stuff out here in this world that I need to explore. And there's so many ways of doing that. And the idea of healing and going somewhere else and going to a different country and just being engulfed in that and having that sacred space held, I think is really important for so many people. And that was like this huge spiritual awakening for me, that there was so much more at my fingertips that I needed to do, and that I wanted to lead women through that process because it was just so freaking cool.
And when have you been able to embody that same feeling back home?
I don't know if ever. I want to embody it so bad. I'm just like, oh, come back to me. When I get little snippets of it is when I'm using aromatherapy in my treatments. And either in the treatments or before a treatment, if I want to just pull all that sacredness into center so I can ground myself and be, you know, of the true essence I need to be in that healing session. And just the power of aromatherapy and how it really just can shift everything. That's probably the closest that I have gotten to that.
Nice. Cool. Well, at least you know, like, what you could do to kind of activate it, right? So maybe spend some more time trying to get back to that first initial walking off the airplane. Maybe neg champa in the shower. I don't know. Maybe something like that.
I've done that, but it's not the same.
No. But again, you know, when you landed and you landed safely, you're like, oh, I'm here, right? Like, that was probably another moment for you too, right? Where you're like, well, that worrying on the plane, like, didn't have to happen, right? I know plane can make a lot of people anxious, though, for sure. But
well, here's something crazy: is I actually did my DNA, the whole lineage thing, and this is so crazy. A tiny little piece goes all the way back to the island of Sri Lanka.
Weird. So
here's another. I was going through a bunch of my stuff from childhood that my mom had in containers and boxes. And my girls wanted to see, like, what did mommy do when she was little? And I opened up this box, and right here, my dad loved Coca-Cola when he was alive. He was a marketing teacher. Everything was Coke because it was just so much fun and colorful, and he loved to drink it. He had a Coke machine in his classroom. And I pulled out this bottle. I was like, holy shit. Can you read that?
It says Sri Lanka on it. That's weird.
Right? That was in my box from when I was in grade school and high school. How the hell did I get this?
It is odd.
So, yeah, definitely a pivotal.
A lot of things were bringing you there. A lot of things were pulling you there.
Oh, I know.
Thank you, Dana, for sharing that story. Anna, what has been your biggest, what was the question? What has been your biggest spiritual event?
Yeah, there have definitely been quite a few, but I think the biggest pivotal moment for me was probably the time I transitioned from my freelance business to my spiritually based business. And it was something that I had totally not planned. It's something that I had kind of seen happening at some point, but I didn't feel ready. And then, like, when I really started doing some soul searching, I really discovered my purpose through that. And I actually took 3 weeks off. I just told all my clients that I wasn't going to be available. And in those 3 weeks, I totally committed to just doing whatever my soul was calling me to do. Basically just having as much fun as I could. But back then that was really, I wanted to work with the angels, and, I was working with cards and intuitive painting and listening or watching a lot of videos on YouTube. And that's really the time when my spiritual gifts started opening. And one thing led to the next. I started blogging about angels and spirituality, and then started doing healing work with clients. And but yeah, I think that was, even now looking back, I think that's still probably the most important moment when I really started opening to my spiritual gifts and to this totally new path that was completely unexpected in a lot of ways.
Cool. Well, I mean, that's so interesting that you can actually, like, bring it back to business connection too, right? So, what do you think, Lisa?
Oh, Lord. There've been a few. And I would say, going all the way back to when I referenced earlier, having, quite literally a nervous breakdown back in my mid-20s. And I remember, like, I was so depressed, like, I didn't want to live. I didn't. And I felt something on my forehead that felt like someone tracing, like, the sign of the cross on my forehead. And I don't know if I was hallucinating or dreaming, or I don't know what that was, but I just knew when I woke up that I wanted to be better, and I wanted to have more, and I wanted to get help. I wanted to heal, and it was just for me, it was very, very surreal. It was like, oh, this is the kind of stuff I read about in like books and magazines about miracles and divine interventions and things like that. And so that for me will always be a very pivotal and spiritual moment, because it literally, it was like the worst part of my, worst point in my life, period. Everything I've been through, that was probably it. And knowing that I still had a job to do here, it was monumental, really. And secondly, I would say, I do believe that the woman that was in the locker room with me that day, while I was cleaning those bathrooms, there's no doubt in my mind that she was not a guardian angel that was sent from above, because how could she even know the things that she knew about me? She knew me, but she didn't know me, right? And then after that, and we were friendly while I worked there, and then as I went off and created my own life, I lost touch with her altogether, and I've not seen her again pretty much since that day. Maybe like a week later, I might have seen her, and that was it. And I tell this story over and over and over and over again about how, that was really the whole wake-up call for me about not hiding and just being true to who I am and just doing the best I can, Those two moments were very pivotal, and they're very poignant and like very, very much a part of my life, and something I'm reminded of often.
I would probably have to say that, and this is kind of like a funny one, but I would probably have to say, and this is a story that I've shared before, but when I was not very clear on, I was clear. When I was changing my business name to Wild and Creative, I really wanted to I felt like I couldn't embody that. I felt like I couldn't be the wild part of Wild and Creative. Now, some of my friends might say that I'm wild. Some might say that I'm not. But I just didn't think that I was really that wild girl. And I thought that people would notice that. And I was pacing all around as I bought that domain, and I was like, I just can't do it. This is not Girls Gone Wild. This is not anything else. And my husband was like, look, next time I said to him, I just don't dance naked under the full moon. I'm not wild. And he said, next time there's a full moon, go out, dance naked under the full moon. Just get it done. You'll feel better about it. So when I did that, and it was a very short time, but when I first did that, I was like, it's a super exciting thing that you can do. Now I live in the country, so if you live in the city, it's a little bit trickier. But when I did that, I was like, there was an earthly kind of connection there that there was something to it, right? There's a really freeing and earthly, mystical kind of vibe to doing something like that. And I think that was one of my favorite kind of, I don't know if it was spiritual, but favorite kind of connection moments to the universe. And I invite you all to do that. It's very exciting. That was probably one of my favorite ones. But you know what? I think that my life has always been made up of tiny, teeny, tiny little ones. And I don't know if I really have anything big, huge, pivotal, spiritual moment, but a massive awakening or lights or what have you. But I think that continuously just being very aware of your intuition and understanding what your body wants and all that kind of stuff. It's always a little bit of a spiritual awakening or spiritual moment, right? So yeah, I don't really have a big story to share for that. Not that I can think of, but but anyway. So I've got a question from Nikki, and Nikki says, what do you do when you're doing your soul's work and you are living your purpose? We kind of talked about this a little bit before, but you're not making money. What should you do? Who wants to go for this first?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry, I was reading the comments.
Yes. And you know what? Before I repeat the question again, I will read some of these comments. So Jem P says, do you think sensitive people can learn how not to burn out and maintain good boundaries before they encounter problems, or only learn really how to look after their needs once burnout and difficulties occur? That is, can we help younger versions of ourselves not suffer as much as us? Who wants to kind of dive into that for a moment? Do you guys get that question? Do you think sensitive people can learn how to not burn out and maintain good boundaries before they encounter problems? We kind of talked on that a little bit, but yes, I mean, well, that's what we talked about, right? It's kind of like, you know, understanding through life's events and through, you know, just life in general, how to kind of navigate and how to maintain, and also like being really aware of things like, you know, different things that slug down your energy and that kind of thing, right?
I think it's your reaction though too to how everything gets thrown at you. I think boundaries are really, really important, but I also think that your reaction and your mindfulness around it and the trigger that may come up, and so doing some of the back end work where the trauma is and the shadow work is and all of that stuff. So if you can really do your own work, you know, while you're either working with people, or if you need to do that before you can work with people, do the back end shit so that you feel like you are balanced, or you can make friends with the shadows that you have in your past. That's exactly what I had to do, and that's what I continue to do all the time, is look at what things are coming up so that I can deal with them in a healthy way, so that I am more healthy and grounded, so that when more stuff comes up, I have like my toolbox of deal with some things, you know. I mean, I think that I'm an incredibly sensitive person, and I think that sensitivity has been my issue for a very long time, but it's also held me back. So the emotional part of being sensitive has been more of a place for me to sit and to worry. How do people know if they need? Everybody needs shadow work. Every single person in the world needs shadow work. We all have trauma. All of us have trauma, and shadow work isn't something to be afraid of. Shadow work is just recognizing the bits and pieces that we have in our past that are parts of our puzzle, so that we can see them as those pieces and not as broken pieces, but as pieces that fit together. Shadow work is a beautiful thing. As a light worker forever, I thought, I'm all about light. I'm all up here. I was really high in the sky, right? And the shadow work was the part of the depths of my soul and of my being that I ran away from, because I was really afraid of all the shit that I would uncover. Some of the things that I uncovered that had a drastic impact on my life was I was bullied from the time I was in first grade through fifth grade, and I was also molested by that girl. Really crazy, impactful shit that totally and completely shifted the way I acted and reacted in my life, that got me to where I am today. And that wasn't something that I had to go back and live. You don't have to go back to the shadow traumatic. That would be awful. Nobody wants to relive all that trauma, but you have to, my tummy's burning. You have to recognize that that's a piece of yourself, so that you can honor that and understand it and know it and hold it in sacred space, so that it's a piece of you that may be a trigger for the future or for your current. Does that make sense?
So what you're saying is that for sensitive people to not burn out and maintain good boundaries is to look at shadow work. And then Jem also said, but how do people know they need shadow work before they encounter problems? But I think the thing is to just always be doing, you know, personal maintenance, like on yourself, right? Like, what are these triggers that are happening? Like, what are these patterns that keep happening for you in your life, right? And what is that related? What could that be related to, right? So, Lisa?
Yeah, I have a slightly different take on all of it. And I appreciate all the healing modalities. I mean, I've been a clinical, counselor. I've, done a variety of other kinds of things, and I respect all of them. I think what Jen was asked, is it Gem?
Gem.
Or Gem, yeah, Jem. Okay. I think what she was saying is like, how do we know if we are actually at the state of burnout? Because how do we, can like somebody else teach us what it feels like to be there and tell us to stop? Or is it something we have to personally experience in order to know what our limit is?
Mm-hmm.
And so while I agree with everyone about, yes, once that's happened, you definitely have to pay attention and understand your triggers, do the work, do the shadow work, do therapy, do what you have to do to get through it. I feel like I don't know if you really know where your personal limit is unless you reach it. And that's not to say that you can't be taught to understand and recognize patterns that are maladaptive or that are going to lead to burnout. I think you can. I think you can be taught that. But I also have this feeling that it's just something that sometimes it's one of those things, like if burnout to me may not be burnout to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like somebody else might thrive in that environment. But if I'm only going off of my experience, how can I say to them, like, don't do that, you're going to burn out, right? So I guess I would say, if you notice any particular things that are just, they're a constant something in your life, right? Like if you keep repeating the same patterns and you feel like you're always tired, you have no energy, you are unhappy in your relationships, whether that's with a partner or family or whatever, but look for those kinds of signs because they are oftentimes indicators, right, that you yourself may need to do a check-in. I think that's where I was seeing that question. So I don't know if that answered it in addition to what everybody else said. It's kind of like, how do you know what you need until you're there? You don't, right?
Yeah.
So I guess that's where I was coming from. Yeah, like once you've been there and you've done that, like, oh yes, like if I start to feel anything, like if I cry for more than like 3 days in a row, I'm like all over it. I'm like, okay, I got to process this, figure this out. Like it's okay, but I'm making sure that I'm not going back to depression, right? I'm making sure I'm not going back. So yeah, I can do all that, but I don't know I would have known how to do that in the first place, because why did I actually fall in the first place?
Yeah, I think that Dana and your answer is like correct.
Yeah, it's like the beginning and the middle, right?
This is like preventative maintenance. Yours is
Yeah.
like dealing with it as it comes up. Anna, would you say that both of those are accurate?
Yeah, totally. And if I can add a little bit to that, I feel like the thought I had immediately, that's actually where you really want to get a mentor if you feel that's a problem for you, because you do have a choice. I know, like, from personal experience, and I believe that we always have a choice. I mean, there are definitely certain things maybe that we need to experience so we know where our boundaries are and so on. But I think when you're building a business and you want to prevent reaching burnout or that kind of thing, I think it's definitely helpful to have, the proper business systems as well, and the strategy, and kind of know how to set up a business. Like that was one thing that I really struggled with when I started my spiritually based business. It was a totally different business model. And I was doing single sessions and readings, at a really low price point. And I wasn't aware that that was just not a sustainable business model for me. And that was part of why I burnt out. Later, when I started doing more high-end coaching, that changed. But I actually worked with a mentor to help me set that up. So, and yeah. So.
That's a good point. I mean, like the thing is support too, right? Like support thing, like through the whole process of everything, life and business, support is everything. There's a funny comment. So Jennifer Jennifer says, I think that people have a misconstrued idea of shadow work. It sounds so hard and daunting, and sometimes it is, but it's basically just looking at your own shit. And I think also you can learn techniques before you experience burnout, so you don't need to have to get to that point of burnout. I think that that's the perfect middle of all of everything that we've been talking about. So that's awesome. Welcome, Kara Melendi. Kara popped on. Hi, Kara. Nice to see you. Are you muted? Nope.
Hi, good. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Yeah, I just jumped in at the end of that conversation there around burnout, I believe. I'm not sure what the initial question was, but yeah, I mean, it's something I think we all have to look at. And like, as soon as I heard people kind of talking about this, what came to mind for me, because my background's in astrology, or at least part of my background, is we're actually coming up on a new moon in Libra, which is all about kind of finding balance in our life. And I think that balance is different for us all, right? And we really have to just find, what does that look like in my life? And when is something off, right? And I think especially in business, like when I think back to times where I've experienced a sense of burnout, it's when that energetic exchange wasn't there. So I think it's so important that we're always kind of in that energetic exchange as well. And sometimes that is through financial abundance. Like if we're constantly kind of giving and we're not receiving anything, we can burn out. So I think it has to be like that flow of energy as well. And we really have to define for ourselves, okay, what does that look like? What is balance in my life at this time? Because it's different for us all and it's always changing. So.
Well,
not sure if that related back to the initial question, but
I'm going to start with you on the next question because I feel like you've segued into it. So Nikki says, what do you do when you're doing your soul's work and you're doing your passion work, but money isn't coming in? What should you do? So I'll start with you, Kara.
Good question. Absolutely. I think it's such a good question. And I think we always have to make sure, like, we are aligned with what we're offering the world. Like it feels aligned and it feels like something we want to do regardless of whether we receive money for it. So it's kind of an interesting thing. Like, yes, we deserve to receive money. We deserve to receive abundance on all levels. But I don't think we can put like that expectation on it at the same time. Like, I'm going to release this course, I'm going to release this service, and it's because I'm going to get money in turn. So we really just have to start with like having the passion, really digging deep and going to why I want to offer this to the world, why I'm offering this program, why I'm offering this service, and really stay connected to that. And then at the same time, there may be doing some work around money to just trust that you get to receive abundantly. Because you do. So in a way, it's like they're kind of two different things. You get to be in financial flow, you get to receive, but at the same time, the work that you're putting out into the world should kind of have a different why attached to it. Like there has to be a deeper reason why you want to do this and why you want to share this with the world. Yeah.
So do you think that it's a tricky thing though, right? Because I mean, society tells people that if you're doing what you love, you're going to make money, but that's not always the case, right? Because there's so many factors. There's the factor of self-worth and like, you know, money issues, money blocks. And then there is, are you enjoying what you're doing? Because if you're not enjoying it and you're just putting in no energy, then that's probably not going to work either. You know, and then there's the guy down the street that makes $5 million a year selling crap on Amazon, and then you're like, does he like, why are we doing all this alignment work? Does he really care what he's doing? Probably not. So what do you think that is? Like, is it just the mix of people's personalities and their energy and their efforts that just gives them these results, right? Is there really not a roadmap, but a recipe for making money doing your passion work? Or
I think you have to believe that you can, right? Like anything in our life, it has to come back to believing that it's possible, believing we are worthy, believing that we deserve. And then, of course, there is strategy involved too. Like, I definitely love to work with the energetic side to it because I think that speaks way louder than any action ever will. Like, being aligned energetically first, even working with like our soul blueprint, because we all have unique gifts. We all have unique talents that we come in with. And when we can harness that, then we do seem to be in flow, because it's like we're not building up as much resistance. We're kind of working with our natural strengths and talents. But sometimes there is the strategy component too, around the marketing and around the selling and how to get the work out there. And really, they do have to come together. We have to do the energetic alignment work. And then knowing some of the strategies around it too can be helpful as well. But yeah, a lot of it can just be releasing, I think, that resistance and trust. I deserve to receive abundance. I deserve to receive financially. And then at the same time, making sure that what we're doing, what we're putting out into the world really resonates with us on a deep soul level and feels like our calling.
Good answer. I like it. Dana, what do you think?
Repeat the question. I was so into Kara. I was like,
so the question just was, what should you do when you're living your soul, what you think is your soul's work? You're living your passion, you're having an amazing time doing what you're doing, but you're not bringing in money. What should you do?
I think that you should look at how you're sharing it. I think that you should look at maybe what your financial platform is, right? I do agree with Kara. You have to connect with what you're doing at a deeper level than just thinking it's content and I have to get it out there. If financially it's not coming in, there is some sort of block somewhere where this is stopping you from receiving, period. So at that point, for me, what I would do for me at that point is I would reach out. I would reach out to a mentor and I would figure out a strategy to find out what the heck was going on. Because if it's not happening and you can get fresh eyes to look at what your program is or what your delivery is, or everything always is, for me, better when I can have someone else's input and see what the flow is. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think, having a mentor or a guide or a coach or something, always making sure that you've got someone in your corner and that you don't have to do it alone. I think that's where it gets really, really important, because there's the energetic side to it, which is always huge. There's figuring out what those blocks are, which is always huge. There's releasing tons of shit, which is always huge, but also figuring out, is it something that has to do with self-worth? And if that's the case, why aren't you connecting to what you're connecting to, or other people too? Mm-hmm. I think what can happen is you can, for me and my like corporate America and all the business world stuff, it was always like, just push harder, push mm-hmm. harder, keep going, push harder, push harder. That never worked out for me. I always got burnt out. So it's, how do you step back and have somebody help you with your process along the way?
Yeah, because even just a fresh set of eyes, right, gives a whole different perspective of just like little things that you're, weren't thinking about or what have you. What do you think, Anna?
I would say, first of all, it's really important to figure out what exactly is going on and why the money isn't coming in. There can definitely be a lot of different reasons. I guess not being completely aligned with our passion and purpose, that can be a big one. One thing that I've seen in my own life and also with a lot of my clients is that usually when that happens, there's a part of that experience that we're really holding on to for a certain reason, usually more of a dysfunctional, subconscious reason. And yeah, but it's kind of a funny thing, like we tend to get attached to our stories or maybe something that we're afraid of letting go of, even if it's something in our lives that's not serving us. I could, share an example. Maybe someone is in a relationship that's not healthy for them and they want to start a business or make more money in their business so they can get out of that relationship. Maybe they're financially dependent on their husband or partner. I've seen that quite a few times. Usually then that issue needs to be resolved first before the money starts coming in. We can work on different levels. Another thing that I've seen with quite a few of my clients, usually stay-at-home moms, their partners, making all the income, and they, and there may be financial issues in the family, and Yeah, I've seen quite a few women, like they wanted to make more money in their business to support their family, but they're kind of taking on all the weight, like they were carrying a lot of weight and they were feeling like really, really responsible, and then not coming from that place of passion, rather just kind of wanting to sacrifice their own well-being to, yeah, carry everybody else's weight. Again, that kind of needed to be resolved first before they could really focus on just moving forward based on the passion. So that those are just a few things, but I think, we just need to be really honest with ourselves about what exactly is going on, why this is happening. And I think also one thing that's really important is to do our best to stay positive, not get stuck in any stories. It can really affect your confidence if you're stuck in that place for too long and like not get into that space where you think, I don't know how to make money. That was my thing for a while. Like I was like in that mindset where I totally thought, I don't know how to make money, but that was just a story I was telling myself, and I kind of really had to get out of that in order to break free and improve my situation.
Awesome. Good. Well, I'm glad you touched on a few of those points there. What do you think, Lisa?
I'm going to sort of just call it like it is, the way I see it. Yes, you have to be fully aligned. You have to feel passionate about what you're doing. You have to be committed to it. You have to be consistent and persistent. Sometimes, though, it can take a little bit of time to start making money. And if you're in a predicament where you need to pay for a mortgage or rent or food or clothing, or you've got children and you need formula and you need diapers and you need basic necessities, my thought process is find that second thing that you really like best, right? Because we all have got a lot of interests, right? So, if you need money and the only legitimate way to get money is to actually work for it, I would say do that, but make sure it's a very short-term plan. Right?
And have that plan like set for yourself, right? It's not the be-all end-all. It doesn't mean you've quit everything. It's just like, this is what.
Right. Or even register for like temp jobs. Register for like to be a substitute teacher, right? I did that when I was in and out of grad school, not sure what I was going to do with my life. Well, I still had to eat. I still had a car payment. Unfortunately, those things, I wish we could barter everything in this world. Okay. For me, that would be a blessing, right? You cook up my veggies and you grow my fruit and everything, and I'll come over and I'll do this for you, right? Like that would be amazing. We don't live in that society so much right now. Not at least where I'm in the Northeast in Connecticut. So here it's like, you don't pay, like you don't eat. I mean, it's just as simple as that. And I do think you have to find something to feel like that you don't want to be in constant distress, right? Yep. I'm trying to run this business, but I got to make money. If that's where you're going and that's why you're doing this business, you're not doing it for the right reason, right? So for me, I'm kind of like, listen, you can even start off doing something that you know how to do very well, that doesn't take a lot of time, that doesn't require a whole lot of extra studying or inputting, I mean, for example, when I first started my coaching business, and a lot of people don't know this about me, but I did social media management. I mean, that's what I did for another entrepreneur who was much more advanced at the time, right, than I was. I was just coming into the field. I didn't know, but I had heard about this, virtual assistant and social media mentors and social media, managers. And I thought, well, I know how to work my way around. Like I can schedule emails for people. And at the same time, it was close enough that I could feel myself moving in that direction. So that's another great idea. Let's say you have a mentor, somebody in your field, ask them, can I mentor under you? Even if it's for an exchange of a small amount of pay. It's something where you're also learning something else and getting closer.
So what all of you are kind of saying in a roundabout way is that it's the law of attraction factor story, right? That, you know, what we think about, we attract. So again, if you are making money, like just the idea of making money, even if it's like $300 a month doing something else, it's really that energy of making money, right? That also kind of gets you through all the other parts of your business too, right? So I remember I wrote down a couple notes here. Although I talk about like alignment in your business, that's like most of what I talk about every day, all day, creative alignment. I did want to mention though that when this is a perfect example, when the law of attraction, the Secret movie came out, The Secret, I was already doing The Secret, and then The Secret came out, and then I started overthinking everything, and my life went downhill for like 3 months. Like I got in a car accident, I lost all like whatever money I had. Like it was like bad because I was overthinking everything. So when someone was talking at first, I think maybe it was Kara, I was like, yeah, you know, things were easier like way back in the day when we weren't like thinking of all these things that we had to do, right? Like, you know, be in alignment and this and that and the other thing. And sometimes when you're just like kind of going about it and you just start just following your happiness and you're not overthinking, like that's the best place to be, right? So our overactive minds can like definitely get in the way when it comes to not making money too, right? The other thing that I wrote down is contradictions. So this is like something that I always make sure people look for the contradictions in their life and their business especially. And there was a girl the other day who maybe it was about a week ago, and she's like, I really want to do one-on-one work. I was like, okay, awesome. But then I was talking to her, and then she was like, oh, I don't want to do discovery calls. Oh, I can't stand being on the phone with people. It's like, well, how are you going to do your stuff, right? So it's interesting how we don't really see like the contradictions that we're living like every single day. And so that's a really, really big thing, right? It's like, what are your belief systems and the feelings you have towards things versus your desires? Because I bet you're going to find some things that are like really contradicting. I know that for me, I've had so many contradictions over my life, and it's actually shocking, like really, really shocking. One big one that I had was that for the longest time, for years, I thought that if you are successful, a very successful person, you have to travel all over the world every day, all the time. And for me, I'm kind of a homebody. I like to travel on vacations and, you know, go to the events and stuff like that. But I don't want to be traveling. I don't want to be a nomad. That's not my jam. I don't care about that. That's not my thing. But I just always thought that people had to travel all the time if they were successful. I knew that wasn't accurate, but that's what I believed. And when I finally realized that, I was like, what the heck? If I have my own business, I can make the rules, right? Like, so it's just really interesting to dive into the contradictions of our minds, because I do think that that's a big barrier sometimes when it comes to us not making the money that we want, right?